being appointed to the role in that initial term is just you. You are the face of the school, you are the team. And I remember being warned that that was a very lonely place to be in as a principal because you're so used to being surrounded by people.
You're listening to Around the School Table, hosted by me, Steve Davis, and proudly powered by Xuno Suite. We'll be bringing together the many voices shaping primary and secondary education across Australia, from principals and teachers to education thought leaders and system innovators. Whether you're in the classroom, the staff room, or the boardroom, this is your podcast to be informed, inspired, and connected. Today on Around the School Table, we're joined by Blayne Wallis, the founding principal of Mindhoek Primary School, set to open in January 2026 in Melbourne's West. Blayne's journey from an unplanned start in teaching to leading a brand new, inclusive, supported inclusion school reflects their deep commitment to create learning environments that truly serve every child. And we'll explore Blayne's philosophy on leadership, the play-based approach to school uniforms, and also the challenges and hopes around launching a new school designed with inclusion at its core. So if you're interested in thoughtful leadership, inclusive design, and how that can shape the future of education, I think this chat is going to be for you. Blayne, welcome to Around the School Table.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Now, before we dive into the specifics of building a brand new school, which is always exciting, let's set the scene for listeners. You've spent your career across the west of Melbourne, starting as a teacher. You never actually planned on becoming one, but you started. Then moving through leadership at Newport Gardens and Cororoit Creek Primary, before becoming the founding principal of Mindhoek Primary School, opening its doors shortly. Why was your entry to education and teaching almost accidental and sparked by a friend who was doing it and then didn't continue?
It's not a very impressive start, Steve. I will acknowledge that. I think it was more about wanting to have some sort of direction after leaving school. As you said, a friend of mine had enrolled in a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Teaching, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. But there wasn't a real drive there at the beginning. So I think it was about giving me something to focus on in terms of further learning. But I will say in those first placements at schools in Ballarat, that's where I'm from, and that's where I did my uni degree. Those first experiences in observing more experienced supervising teachers, that really lit the spark, because I was quite envious of those educators and watching the way they interacted in the classroom and how they were supporting their children, how organised they were, how across all these subject areas they needed to be as a generalist. And then that's when the passion really increased in observing other people in their practice.
That's interesting. It reminds me, there's a proverb I'm not going to get right, but something that goes along the lines of, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And yes, it's almost like when you were ready, the vision and the motivation sort of emerged through your pores.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was watching them that was awe-inspiring to me. And then slowly over those placements, I thought this could be something that I could do and enjoy doing it. And it took a few, there's that initial trepidation about, wow, these people are so good at their practice. Is this something really? But I think it was the learning in a university setting that really supported that, and then had a very successful first teaching round. And then 24 years later, I've never left school. So it's worked.
I think it has. And it is noted somewhere that you share that a personal driver for you is, I wanted to be the teacher I didn't get when I was in primary school. Can you unpack that a little bit for me, and about that, and also how it's impacted the way you've operated?
Yes. I had a very mixed experience in my own primary and secondary education. I had some wonderful teachers and some not so wonderful teachers. And in university education, when it's connected to teaching and learning, you often spend time reflecting on those years in a way that you wouldn't ordinarily. And I remember at uni thinking about who were those teachers that I had in my learning that were really awe-inspiring as well, and why they were so inspiring to me and so supportive. But then on the flip side too, who were the ones that didn't bring out the best in me and didn't necessarily support the learning? I was a very quiet child, Steve. I was very content being the wallpaper in the room. Don't look at me, don't ask any questions, don't draw attention. I'll just sit here and get through the lesson. And I'd spent a lot of my education thinking and feeling that way. And so I guess in my own teaching, when I had my own grade, I was very keyed in to those children in the learning environment. And wanting to understand why. So what was it that wasn't being provided for that child in their learning to support them? What was that quietness about? What was that don't draw attention to me? Clearly there was a need there for the adults, the educators in the space, and that was my job. I was charged with that responsibility in teaching those children. I guess I was just keyed into those children a little bit more because of my own experience in schools.
I think back to a teacher I had. It wasn't primary, it was secondary, but we moved schools a lot because of my dad's work. And so in year 11, I was very much in my shell. And it took one English teacher at the first parent night to say, look, there's someone in there. I know he's waiting to emerge. And when he does, boy, just watch out. That to me is one of those X factor things about teachers and teaching. Yes, you've got a curriculum to get through, but there's that ever-observant potential for connection with students to nurture and help them crack out of any little shells they're in. I guess you would have loved having a teacher like that in those early years yourself, yes?
Absolutely. I would explain that, Steve, as care. They just care about their children. They care about how they're doing in a wellbeing sense. They care about what's happening with them in terms of their learning. They care enough to know the child as a complete child. I think that has a huge impact. And you can see it. You can see it a mile off, people that are in the role for the right reasons because they want to have that positive impact. Without a doubt. They're the teachers that make the biggest difference.
Wow. Now, you grew up in Ballarat. You moved to Sydenham and spent your entire career in the west of Melbourne. I'm curious whether this lifelong connection to the west has had any sort of influence on the kind of leader you've become.
Absolutely, I think it has. I think we have the best in the West. I think we have the best teachers. We have the best communities. We have the best schools and leaders in the West. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. I think initially the tie was to be close to family. So my family are in the west of Melbourne, so not wanting initially in my career to be too far away from them. I think the west of Melbourne focuses on the right work. I really do. It's that wonderful balance between the wellbeing and the learning, and we have exceptional teachers in this part of the state. So that's what's kept me here. It was enough challenge, enough new learning that I never wanted to leave and couldn't imagine leading in education anywhere else.
Are you suggesting there's perhaps more groundedness in the West?
Yes, absolutely. It's the reality it's the skill set that you develop and you refine in those day-to-day experiences in lots of different types of communities. I think the support network in the west of Melbourne is fantastic. I've worked in a few different networks in the state, and it's that interconnectedness that I think has a wonderful impact too.
Mm. Now, looking at your career, your journey from classroom teacher to assistant principal, then principal, isn't something that you've ever pushed for. You're quoted as saying, someone had to sort of whisper in your ear and nudge you towards leadership. And it reminds me of a very short Leonard Cohen poem that said, "They locked up a man who wanted to rule the world. The fools, they locked up the wrong man." And he was meaning by that yet you think they're the people to be scared of. No, it's the quiet ones who are emerging. They have the real potential power for leadership. Do you think Leonard's talking about you there?
Potentially. Potentially. Ironically, it was at each stage in my career that it was always someone that worked closely with me, that saw my practice, that would say, "Hey, have you thought about applying for this? Or have you thought about putting in a submission for this role?" And the initial response, and I'm sure it harks back to my own education, the initial response was always, no, I can't do that. That's too much. For me, I need to ruminate and sit on things for a little while and process it. But it was always the support of colleagues that pushed me in that direction. And I suppose that has had a very large impact on the way that I lead the people that I work with, that I look for those opportunities, those assets, those values, those individuals who are perhaps not overly confident. They're not the people who are doing the most talking in the staff room. They're not the people that are always putting their hand up, but you can see that there's some potential there with some support and some guidance that can be further developed.
What sort of things spring to mind as those little hallmarks that make you go, oh, I can see something there?
For me, it's the people that focus on the work. So there's a lot of distractions in schools. They're busy, loud places, or they can be. I think it's the people that are constantly bringing the conversation back to the work, which are the children that attend that school. That's the core reason we exist. That's why we're treading the same carpet for all those hours in a working week. It's the students that we need to be focused on. And I think even at a classroom level, when you've got teachers that have that ability to do that, to lasso the spotlight back onto the children in that space, that's something that's really important and should be harnessed and nurtured.
Wow. While we've got you waxing philosophical here, I want to quote back words that you said to yourself. Don't you love that?
Yes.
It's advice that you've been heard saying. Don't sit in the same school for too long. You work in a system bigger than yourself, so move around. Why do you think that advice is important?
It's nice to be comfortable in a space professionally. I think that's something that humans seek, but it is possible to be in the same spot for a very long time. And I would challenge whether people are growing and contributing to the system beyond the walls of their own school setting. I know I did that for part of my career. I sat in the same school, and I gained a lot from those experiences and still have connections with those professionals today. But it was only stepping outside of that comfort zone, because schools are different, settings can be very different. There are different opportunities, there are different focuses, there are different goals and strategies in different settings. And it was only stepping outside of that comfort zone that I found, particularly around leadership, that those opportunities were presented to me. And yes, and I could move to a different space and be doing different work, relying on the skill set that I developed, but working in a different community, feeling a little bit more challenged. I think I was comfortable for quite a while. So, and I think as a leader, that's something that you should take pride in, the fact that you are building a system beyond your own school, that you're contributing to a system that's much bigger. And that's a bragging point for a principal. If you can have an assistant principal or a leading teacher that goes on to do great things in their career, and you can think, oh, I might have had something to do with that progression there, that should be a real point of pride, I think, for school leaders.
For some reason, I know I'm just pulling quotes out of my head here, but this is not so much a quote, but I remember hearing talked about a lone monk, Celtic monk, living somewhere in the UK lands, who has never moved for decades and decades, and as a result is someone who is sought out for their wisdom. I guess, would you say that perhaps some of those staff members who do stay at a place for a long time can bring something to offer with their corporate knowledge, etc., provided they haven't tipped over into staleness? It's a balancing act?
Completely. And I think that there are different leaders can bring out different things in professionals in a setting that, there might be a particular skill set or a particular knowledge base that a leader has, and they can draw that out of their staff in a way that perhaps wouldn't happen in the setting that a teacher is in. I just think there are so many opportunities out there.
Yeah.
Why not grow? Why not embrace it? Why not look to develop that skill set as much as you possibly can? Because at the end of the day, that's only going to be of benefit to the children that you're leading or teaching.
Talking of stepping out of complacency and out of comfort zones, let's turn our attention to a greenfield school. You're the new principal there. The big question on everyone's lips, I know this because I've got two daughters, is what's the uniform going to be? How do you decide on uniforms?
One of the most important decisions, Steve, without a doubt. I didn't actually know about that term I had not heard that term before, Greenfield School. It's a new concept. I understood the concept,
Yeah.
but I hadn't heard the term and needed it to be explained to me. Um, yes, the uniform is a big deal. It's the initial branding of your school. You want it to be unique. You want it to look smart. So I consulted with neighbouring schools just to make sure that I wasn't, developing something that was very similar to theirs, so that our children would be seen out in the community wearing this new smart uniform. It actually came to me in a dream. I think I may have been falling asleep at the time and thought, oh, I want the base colour to be black, and I would like the accent colour to be a mint. And then I checked in with a few people in my life and said, hey, what do you think about this? And got some feedback. And the feedback was very positive. And then that's what I went with.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, that's a colour combination I hadn't anticipated coming, especially because I've heard that it's play-based, the approach to this uniform. So I'm very curious about this. And my first thought goes, well, it's not going to show as much dirt or marks or scuff, so that probably works. And it's possibly at the other end of the spectrum of what, say, Eton schoolboys would be wearing. What is a play-based uniform? And is colour part of that, or is it more the function of the cloth itself and the cut?
Yeah, you've described it beautifully. That's exactly what it is. It's the practicality of the uniform, wanting it to be very cost-effective for our families, but so that children can comfortably go into a play space and engage in play with their friends for half an hour and then transition into their classroom for their learning, and for that transition to be seamless. And for the children to be comfortable. That's the premise of play-based, but also practical. I chose not to include any white shirts. I can't imagine from a parent perspective how challenging that would be to keep those clean and tidy, and what washing would look like in the home. So definitely play-based and darker in colour to hide the marks, as you said.
Well, yes, because I grew up in grey, basically. So at least I feel like black's a little sexier. It's a little more... out there.
Yes, and I'm hoping it stands out. I've seen it on mannequins. Our uniform company are doing a wonderful job on listening to feedback and making tweaks at my request. For example, our mint accent colour we had going down the inside of our sleeves, and then it dawned on me 24 hours later that could get quite messy as a light colour. So had to make some changes along the way, because you have to be practical when you're talking about children and food and playing outside in dirt and on grass, etc.
I'm looking forward to your range of chocolates, that is dark chocolate that's almost black with a really green minty centre.
It's wonderful, wonderful. That sounds amazing.
Good morning.
Selamat pagi.
Kalimera.
Buongiorno.
Magandang
좋은
umaga.
아침이에요.
Want to make sure every parent feels connected and informed, no matter what language they speak? Communication just got easier. With Xuno's multi-language feature, you can now connect with parents in over 130 languages, automatically translated, instantly understood, whether it's reminders, updates, or celebrations. Families receive your message in their preferred language, with no extra steps from you, no confusion, just clear communication. Every time. Try it today to build stronger school-to-home partnerships, inclusive, effortless, and effective.
Now, Minduk will open with around 170 students, January 27, 2026, just the date there, because podcasts are listened to at all times. As the founding principal, what does this countdown feel like professionally and personally as you move towards that date?
Well, it's moving at breakneck speed in term 4, that's for sure. I remember being appointed to the role in that initial term is just you. You are the face of the school. You are the team. And I remember being warned that was a very lonely place to be in as a principal, because you're so used to being surrounded by people, big ones and little ones. And it's just you on your own. I appreciated that time in a way I didn't think I would, because it gave you a quietness to think about those big picture implementations. What are the school values going to be like? What is the motto going to be like? What do I have to make sure is represented in our school policies? Important decisions like uniform, for example. So I enjoyed that solitary space for a short period of time. It's a real privilege. Principals don't often get to work in a space like that, where there's that quiet contemplation. So I really took advantage of that to get as much as I could done.
Like that monk over in the UK.
Yes. Yes, it's amazing what you can do in a very quiet space without a lot of distraction. Um, I think it feels it feels very exciting because there is this countdown, and I've been sharing that date, 27th of January. 27th of January, I've said it a million times over the last 6 months or so, and I'm sure I'm going to wake up on the morning of the 26th and be panicked and think, oh, what have I not done? What have I not arranged? What have I forgotten about? But it's really exciting. The community here have been so welcoming. They're asking great questions. They want to be involved. They want the best for their children. It is very exciting. I'm not sure how much I'm going to remember about that first day of opening. I'm sure it will all be a blur when I look back on it in a few months' time. But yeah, it's very exciting. Very exciting. I feel very privileged to be given this responsibility. Yeah.
Start with a whole of school mindfulness exercise for 20 minutes and then you'll remember everything.
I hope so.
And how have you chosen your staffing? How have you gone about that? We've already heard what you look for in potential leaders, but how have you picked your team?
Well, having that term on my own to think about our school motto, to think about our values, to think about what I wanted to grow, what I wanted to create here. It was looking for those opportunities at interview and in conversation with potential applicants where I could see a connection between what I'm trying to do now with my leadership team supporting for the remainder of this year. Asking the right questions at interview was so important. There's a real allure about a new school, a shiny new school with brand new resources and amazing facilities. That's very appealing to teachers. So I think being very purposeful in the questions that are asked at interview and, checking references and looking for those connections between this is what I know we want to build, this is what I know a high-performing school emulates, this is what they do, and can I see that practice and experience in people that are applying? And I'm wrapped with my team that I've appointed. I've still got a few more appointments to make. But I think we've done a great job as a panel in making these appointments.
Is this why you say if you hire hard, you work easy?
Absolutely. Sometimes there can be a panic if you've got a role that needs to be fulfilled. I think having high expectations is something that a school leader shouldn't apologise for. That when you set that high expectation, that's generally where people will meet you. And I include children in that as well. If we expect little from our children, that's generally what they'll give us. But I think in a recruitment sense, that's really, really important.
Wow, this is such a fascinating chat because you talked earlier in looking at leaders, there are some who love the spotlight and are attracted to it. The allure of a new school might also attract some people with those motivations. I don't want to malign anyone because, teachers are great. We love our teachers. I guess you're conscious of that in what you're looking for as you need some of that pizzazz, but you need it grounded in that care for the students, don't you?
Definitely. And I think I'm a firm believer too, Steve, that with the right support, the right leaders and time, teachers can become exceptional at their job in the right environment with the right support. But it does come down a lot to attitude. What's their outlook on their profession? How do they feel about the role that they play in a school environment? I think attitude is hugely important. And if there's a gap in practice, then that's my job and my assistant principal's job to fill that gap through professional learning and through instructional coaching. Yeah, attitude is key, very much so.
The most surprising thing I've learned in doing a little bit of reflection before our chat is I get it. There'd be, I expect, a land rush of teachers who want to move and start here. You've got a play-based uniform, but the PE teacher position was the most difficult one to fill. What's that telling us about workforce pressures on specialisation in education right now?
It is a challenge. Since COVID, recruitment has been, it can be challenging for principals and for leadership teams. The department have a wonderful array of resources to combat this and support principals in recruitment. It's hard. I actually think it's my fault. I didn't offer a tour of the amazing facilities prior to the role opening. And I think once you've seen that, I think that's one of the most appealing parts. So I do take ownership of that. That was my error in judgment. I think, you need to accept at times that if you don't find the right person, then you go again. And if you have to go again, then so be it. Some of our roles we've had a lot of interest in. I think it's perseverance and being patient that you'll find the right person. Yeah.
Well, look, in this series of podcasts, we did interview Lisa Burt from Knox Central Primary School, who is not only principal but also PE teacher. So that's always up your sleeve, I suppose, if worse comes to worse.
That may be the reality come January, that it might be me teaching in that beautiful new gym, but that's okay. I can do that.
Now, Mindog is a SIS school, a supported inclusion school. It's built to relieve pressure on specialist settings and it's sort of embedded inclusive design from day one. But shouldn't all schools really be SIS schools at some level?
Absolutely. The premise of the supported inclusion model is that there are provisions in our build and in our enrolment policy to accommodate children with a physical or intellectual disability. I think inclusion is the heart of that premise, and I think that's something that all schools aspire to, inclusive practices. It's not a program, it's not an implementation, it's not some professional learning, it's just a way of existing and a way of being. And I think that's what a supported inclusion school symbolises. It's just the way we do things.
An ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's the way that you live and breathe your professional work. This is how, this is how we do things. And I know I've been very cognizant of that in our policy writing and our interactions with the community, that I'm sharing that information and those premises with, potential candidates for teaching positions, in our family meetings, in our parent information evenings. Inclusion is a school-wide value. So our parents will be very used to hearing those concepts and that value shared. I think it is what all schools should aspire to. And, we're looking towards a multi-tiered system of support that supports all of our children, irrespective of ability, irrespective of age, irrespective of learning level. We need to be seen to be supporting all of them.
Now, I hear all that, and that's talking into the broader school culture particularly. But what about at a bricks and mortar level? Has it impacted classroom design at all?
It has. There are some provisions in the build to accommodate that. I would say in writing our Mindog manual, for example, so that's kind of like our go-to Bible for staff around the way we're going to do things. I've made sure that theme of inclusivity is littered through that document quite extensively. So, and just prompting teachers to think about these concepts. For example, when they're setting up their resources in their classroom, have they given thought to accessibility for all students in that space? What does transitioning look like for their grade? So yes, I would say it very much is. So there's the practical sense in terms of the physical build, but then there's also those planning accommodations that teachers need to very much be aware of and keyed into. Am I being inclusive of all of my students?
Yeah. Finally, as we look towards opening day at the time of recording and beyond, what's your deepest hope for Mindog Primary School? What do you want it to mean to families and children who walk through those gates?
That's a big question. My goodness. I've been working towards that since the end of April. So that's been a significant portion of my year this year. I think there's a short-term and a long-term answer in that space. So I think it's, I would like the community to feel connected to us as the people that are charged with this responsibility. I think in the short term, that's about relationship building, and we're doing that already before opening with our family meetings and information sessions and the conversations we're having with, early childhood centres, for example. So I think it's around relationship building, and through those experiences on site that our community will come to know what it is that we represent. If I was to fast forward into the longer term, and I would hope that someone who wasn't connected to the school community would ask a parent about Mindhoek Primary, that they, of course, would be complimentary, but they would be able to talk about what we represent and how we do that so that we're focused on the right work. It's that balance between the wellbeing and the learning, that they feel comfortable to be in the space and that they know that their children are achieving. I think that level of comfort and connection is really important in the short term, but it's about us achieving the outcomes that we set out to achieve. Are our children growing? Are they developing? Are they socialising well? Are we accommodating the different needs in the school community? I have that checklist, Steve, in my head. These are the things I'm going to be thinking about and looking for when it comes to February, and then what it looks like on reflection in December. But I think if parents speak positively about walking over that threshold, that they're greeted with a smile and that they know that their children are well supported in the classroom, then I will be exceedingly pleased.
Fantastic. Look, thank you for such a lovely chat about this. I wish you all the best as the year unfolds and beyond. And I do look forward to getting a little block of your Mindhoek, I'm going to call it Mindhoek chocolate when that's out. Blayne Wallis, thank you very much for joining me around the school table.
Thank you for having me, Steve.